Welcome to Inside Naija Radio, a guide to radio broadcasting in Nigeria, featuring conversations with the finest presenters, programmers, and opinion leaders in the industry. Here's your host, On Air Personality and Project Manager, Zibby.
Hi, I'm Zibby, and you are officially welcome to the first episode of my new podcast, Inside Naija Radio. I'm an on-air personality. I work at Classic FM 97.3 Lagos, which is part of the Mega Electrics family. I'm also a project manager, a writer, an entrepreneur, which just means that I have a few side hustles. And I'm also a microbiologist. Quick background professionally, I have been in the radio industry for 4 years and 6 months. I've been podcasting 4 years and 9 months. Podcasting is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me because it opened up a whole world to me and actually got me into the radio industry here in Nigeria. As a podcaster, I've been blessed to interview a lot of amazing people. I've interviewed the Grammy-winning poet and rapper JIV. You might remember him from Kanye West's Never Let Me Down. I've also interviewed the Cameroon international football player Patrick Sufo. I've interviewed Seun Kuti, who's the Afrobeat star and son of Fela, the Nigerian Swiss composer T-Mac Isley. I've interviewed a lot of people independently on my podcast. I did interview Black Bearer for the Koa Party, Professor Remy. I've had 4 different podcasts. I started off with the Zibby Show. I basically started the Zibby Show because I moved back to Nigeria and I was stressed out. I was trying to adapt and I felt like I needed to basically get my voice and my thoughts out there. So I started the Zibby Show. And then I moved on to African pop culture. I had a podcast called the BBA Podcast, which is basically for Big Brother Africa. I'd interviewed some of the biggest stars over the years from Big Brother. It was hugely successful. I also had a podcast, still do, called Nigeria Untold. Basically, I was sick and tired of all the bad press Nigeria gets. I mean, it's no lie that it's a difficult society, but there are a lot of hardworking Nigerians out there as well who are doing amazing, and I just wanted to celebrate the beauty and diversity and their accomplishments as well. So yeah, that's Nigeria Untold. And now Inside Naija Radio. So basically, I've been in this industry for a while, and there's a lot I've learned over the years. There's a lot I wish I learned earlier. There's a lot I wish I knew earlier, and there's still a lot of potential for growth and learning and, just being the best you can be. And this is what Inside Naija Radio is all about. Inside Naija Radio basically is a guide into the media industry in Nigeria. We'd have conversations with the biggest names, the best names in presenting, production, programming, everyone involved with the process, not forgetting the radio station bosses as well. Everyone. There's so much information out there. And I decided that, having this podcast would be like a little portal where you can get all the information that you can regarding the radio industry in Nigeria. So it doesn't matter if you're a broadcaster or if you're planning to come into broadcasting, or maybe you're even thinking of investing. There's a lot that you can take away that can be applied to different fields outside radio and even outside media generally.
Let's go. This podcast is brought to you from thezibbyshow.com. The Zibby Show, life, media, and more.
On one of my podcasts, I interviewed the Cameroon international player Patrick Sufo. And in that interview, I asked him if he had been to Nigeria. He spoke a little bit about playing football in Nigeria. This is the interview that got me on radio. This interview changed my life. Here's a clip from it. Let's talk about early life and growing up in Cameroon. How did you get into football?
I grew up in an area where football was always the first thing for everyone. I lived next to one of the top teams in Cameroon training ground, which is Canon de Yaoundé.
Have you ever been to Nigeria?
Yes, twice. I think it was the inauguration of the football stadium in Abuja. I was in Nigeria for 2 or 3 weeks, and we lost in the final against Nigeria.
Now the thing is, Kester Buzube, who was the MD of Radio Port Harcourt 91.7 at the time, he listened to the interview with Patrick Sufo, and the game that Patrick Sufo had talked about playing in Abuja. He was actually at that game. And he said, have you thought about being on radio? Yeah, I said, yeah. And he said, come to the office and let's talk. And all excited, I went, and he said, okay, you can have an audition. He introduced me to Spaceman. Hey, Spaceman. Spaceman was the director of programs at the station. Spaceman is my colleague right now. He works for BFM. Spaceman told me to come back the next day for an audition. So I did some research about auditions and, everything else. A few days later, they said, okay, come back. And I came. And I had my driver waiting for me downstairs. And after sitting down for an hour, I walked to Spaceman. I said, okay, what's going on? My driver's waiting. And he's like, well, tell your driver to go because you are at work. And that was it. I was on radio. And, first week or so, I wasn't going on air. If I did, it was just, in certain conversations, they needed input. But I was recording a segment called On This Day. So I had to get the content, I had to record, and I learned a lot about how to use your voice in that time. Shout out Spaceman. And shortly after that, I was ready to go on air, and KO, who's still one of my best friends in the world right now, he was my first co-anchor. We did the midday show together. Now, after about a month, he got a job offer somewhere else, so he left. So I had to do the show on my own, and that's how I got into radio. Now I've worked, from Radio Port Harcourt, I moved on to Cool FM 95.9 Port Harcourt, where I met KO again, and then moved on to Classic FM 91.1 Port Harcourt, and now Classic FM 97.3 in Lagos. So in this 4.5 years of my venture into radio, there have been a lot of ups and downs. I've been nominated for 2 awards in that time. One was the NBMA, I believe it was, yes, while I was at Cool FM. And then shortly after, I came to Lagos, started at Classic FM 97.3 Lagos in February. And in March, or was it April now, I was nominated back in Port Harcourt for the work I had done over the year. So that was a very, very good moment for me. But yeah, that's my life on radio so far.
Let's go. This podcast is brought to you from thezibbyshow.com. The Zibby Show, life, media, and more.
Now, regarding Inside Naija Radio, when I first started in radio, there was no guide to the media industry and how things were done. I'd listen to a lot of radio stations outside Nigeria. I'd read a lot of books from these presenters. And, there's a lot you can learn. But then you need to be able to look at your society and say, this would work in my society and this wouldn't. There's certain things you can get away with on UK radio that you cannot even dream of doing on Nigerian radio. So those are some of the areas I had to work through to understand. I also wanted to know about the opportunities I had as a radio presenter, because I knew it went beyond just coming on air, prepping for your show, doing your show and leaving. There had to be more, and the trends as well. And another thing is, no one really asks radio presenters questions, because the presenters are the people asking questions. We are the people interviewing and digging. No one really digs into the radio presenters to try to get all that wealth of information. A lot of presenters have had careers in other fields. They have a lot of knowledge. A lot of presenters don't traditionally study media or broadcasting or journalism. Some of them, I have a very good friend, Hey Adora. She's a lawyer and she's a really, really good radio presenter as well. If you have the knowledge, chances are there's someone out there that needs a piece of it. So that's why I decided to start Inside Naija Radio, where everyone in the radio industry can just come together and have a little, like our portal, our sit down, our forum, where these conversations will happen. And it's not just for people in radio or people trying to get into radio, people trying to invest in radio. It's for everyone, because there's so many lessons that you can learn, tips, tricks, techniques that have been used successfully in radio and media that can be applied to other different industries. Now, how do you build a brand? How do you stand out? How do you make that leap from being a radio presenter to being an exec or being a programmer? How do you manage your personal life with work? How do you grow your social media? People say radio is dead. If you Google radio is, the next word that comes up is dead. Is it dead? Is it dying? What next after radio? What happens when you're out of the job? Like any other industry, one day you're in, the next day you're out. What do you do? I know this. What do you do? Okay, what are the side gigs you can do to complement your income? Because, we're not millionaires. At least I'm not yet. Okay, so how do you get into radio? How do you get out? How do you work with a difficult co-anchor? How do you brand yourself? How do you infuse your skills into radio or infuse your radio skills into anything else you're doing? How do you handle the stereotypes, the myths about being on radio? Now, contrary to what people think, being on radio is not all glamorous. It's a business. It's not just, it's fun, I'm going to come and play music and kiki and head out. It's a business that needs to be profitable. So you run it, you work in it, you take it as a real business. And it's not just about the presenter. It's a massive structure behind the scenes. You have the news and the sports team, you have the music department, you have production, you have programmers, you have marketing, traffic, the all-important HR. There's IT, there's accounting, there's engineering, and of course there's digital media. It's moved from being traditionally audio to visual. People want to see what you're doing. People want to see your life. While you're in the studio, people want to know what's going on when the music is playing. People might not be listening, but they want to keep up with the station. What music are they playing? Well, maybe I can download that. No one is left out. Even the janitorial staff are a huge part of that engine. Don't forget the all-important research and compliance with the ratings. These groups come together to make up radio. It's not just one way. It's a massive, massive thing. And there are a lot of myths and stereotypes regarding radio. Now, this one is it's funny. People always say radio presenters have a face for radio. That means they should be heard and not seen. A lot of people think radio presenters have great voices, but are not very pretty. King KO, radio personality with Cool FM 95.9 Port Harcourt, shares his opinion on this.
So on the myth that radio personalities don't look good, I will say that technology is actually making that myth less popular. I'll explain it this way. Back in the day, when people would listen to their favorite radio personality, they would go for weeks, months, maybe even years, listening to this person without seeing what they looked like. And during that period, they would have to form an image in their minds of what the person looked like. Typically, just because they like that person, they would form an unrealistic image of what he or she looked like. So when they finally got to see the person, it would usually be a disappointment. It's not because the person didn't look good, but it's because the listener had an unrealistic image of what he or she would look like. So but now, thanks to the internet, when you hear a voice on the radio, very quickly, if you're curious enough, you can go to their Facebook, their Instagram, or Twitter, and you'll see an image of the person. You might have even seen this person on TV, because nowadays, radio is becoming more visual. And so there's less of a chance of you having this unrealistic image of what this person would look like. And so, yes, it's not that we don't look good, it's that the listeners are the ones who have this fantasy of what that radio personality looks like. And it's always a disappointment when they finally get to see the person.
Back in the day, it used to be like a blind date. Okay, so as a radio presenter, people expect you to sound a certain way. And then when you sound a certain way, some people say, why do you sound that way? Lawrence from Classic FM 97.3, the host of Nocturnal Classics, shares his view.
Funny thing, just this morning, there's one on social media that says a lot of presenters in Lagos have the wrong kind of accent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
what is the right kind?
Exactly.
And what is the wrong kind?
Exactly. I see someone there responded to say, would you prefer Igbo accent? So, I mean, it's all about speaking properly English, I suppose. So, that's it, I guess. Some would say it's misidentification, so to speak.
There's this stereotype that once you're a radio presenter, you get things easily, you get special treatment, people are nicer to you, things fall into place. Is this really true? Maryann Okon from Nigeria Info FM 92.3 Port Harcourt gives the details.
Yes. The moment you say you're pressed, the moment you say, oh, I'm Maryann Okon. Oh, you're Maryann Okon of Nigeria Info. Oh my God, are you serious? Oh, I'm going to pay for your loan. Don't worry. I mean, I've had my way at police checkpoints. I've had my way. I mean, I get lots of favors, by the way, just being an on-air person, because, you know, lots of people listen to you. A lot of people want to meet you. A lot of people have respect for you because of the show you do or how much value they've gotten from, you know, what you put out on the radio or if you're on TV. So, yeah, I've gotten a lot done just by being an on-air person, and I love it.
Let's go. This podcast is brought to you from thezibbyshow.com. The Zibby Show, life, media, and more.
Inside Naija Radio is going to be on for the next 12 weeks, and we'll have some of the biggest names in the radio industry, from the management staff to the presenters to the programmers to digital media, everyone involved in the process. And every week we'll have them here on Inside Naija Radio, spilling the details with me, Zibby. Thank you so much for being a part of this maiden edition of the podcast. Inside Naija Radio is the one-stop portal for everything radio in the Nigerian industry. If you'd love to be a part of this podcast in any way, please shoot me an email. It's insidenigeriaradio@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's someone you would love to hear from, same applies, insidenigeriaradio@gmail.com. You can tweet at me. I'm at ZibbyJ on Twitter. Just search for President Zibby. And on Instagram, I'm Countess_Zibby. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Take care. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Inside Naija Radio. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, TuneIn, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts. For all links and contact information, please visit thezibbyshow.com.